Hi, Luke here. I'm going to walk you through how to improve your speaking skills, specifically using tutors. And they're not necessarily paid tutors, they could be free language exchange partners, but we're talking about sessions online, preferably, or in person with native speakers, how to go about that. Because it's not just a factor of giving some random person on a website all your money and then just going to class and expecting your speaking to get better. There's a process that you should go through. And you should have a plan. You should know what you're aiming to do. You should have goals. So we're going to go through all of this. So ideally, you have built up a vocabulary of, say, around 1,000 words, maybe 80% of the language. If you finish, that includes listening, speaking, and reading, like actually being able to read the characters as well. That's ideal. Now, of course, there's more than one way. You don't have to use just language exchange partners or tutors. But if you're not in China or you don't live in a very Chinese community elsewhere, it's kind of tough to do it consistently. So our personal recommendation is paid tutors, just because if you're paying for it, it's all about you, and you basically get higher quality sessions and you get more bang for your buck because there's actually some buck there. So first of all, let's start with the basics. Tutors are not essential for absolute beginners, but you can, please, if you feel like you've just started, maybe you're just at the beginning of our course, or you've just done pronunciation mastering, go ahead, or you can only say ni hao in Chinese. Go ahead and hire a tutor if that's what you really want to do. But you're going to get much more out of your tutors if you have a foundation. That's why we put this particular video where it is in the Mandarin Blueprint Method curriculum. It's after you've finished phase 5, after you've finished the foundation course and you have a vocabulary of 1,000 words, both reading, writing, and pronunciation, everything. So that's something to go on. You can actually build upon that. And Mandarin Blueprint, our philosophy is about holistic learning. You learn something and then you apply it, but you've got to have the bottom-up learning first. You've got to learn some characters, learn some words before you can go and use it and see it in context. So that's the first point. Build a foundation, of course, and essentially go with your gut. If you feel like you want to teach and you want to start experimenting, I think you should definitely do it. Even if you're not, you don't feel like you've built your foundation fully yet, it's not that expensive to hire a tutor, and it's free to find a language exchange partner and just try some stuff out. Be a bit adventurous, test your comfort zone, go outside your comfort zone as well. But basically think to yourself, do I need a tutor, or do I fancy using some of this stuff that I've been working my butt off trying to learn? If the answer is yes, then go and do it. Maybe even a few sessions. If you feel like you're not getting much out of it at that point, maybe you tried a few different tutors and it's not for you, or you're just struggling too much in the classes, wait a couple of months and then do it again. So how to actually use a tutor? Let's start over. What is a tutor for? Most people, if they've not heard of Mandarin Blueprint, essentially like me or Phil, when we were first learning Chinese, and the vast majority of people just learning, they think, okay, well, I'm going to go find a native tutor, and I'm just going to put my life in his or her hands and say, teach me Chinese. But that's not really what a tutor is for, in our opinion. So here's what a tutor is for. A tutor is for activating passive vocabulary. A teacher is not necessarily for teaching you passively the stuff, teaching you how to read and listen to stuff. That's how you build your passive vocabulary. Just to be clear, passive vocabulary is words that you understand, but can't necessarily use that easily, fluently, as they say. So you might know the word dig actively in English, but you might not have the word excavate active in your active vocabulary, where you can just use that whenever you want, right? But certainly you would have excavate in your passive vocabulary. If someone understood it, if someone said it, you'd be able to, I know what that word means. So your passive vocabulary always massively outweighs your active vocabulary in any language, but more so for a second language. And that's why comprehensible input is so important. The more you read, the more you listen, the more passive vocabulary you build up, and therefore the more you have to activate. Now, it's not you don't only activate words and vocabulary and grammar functions through speaking and writing output, but I would say it's a huge component of doing that. So speaking and writing is where you have, after all of your practice and repetition of seeing different words in context and acquiring subconsciously that grammar, speaking actively, using those words, sort of calls upon those grammar functions and vocabulary at the right time. It doesn't always work, but once you've called upon a word for the first time, it kind of activates it, and it's always in your vocabulary at that point. Unless you go a long time without using it, and then it sort of goes back to passive again. But that's generally the process. So tutors, speaking practice, and writing practice. We'll make another video about writing practice shortly. It's all about activating what's already there in your mind, already kind of acquired. You just want to bring it to the forefront of your brain so you can use it fluently in conversation whenever you like. And that's what speaking is for. That's what tutors are here to help you do. Pointing out mistakes. Now, Phil and I are advanced Chinese speakers, and we can read and speak fluently in Chinese and also at a fairly high level. But one thing that native speakers will always have as an advantage over non-native speakers is that no matter how much we try, we'll probably, unless we get really obsessed, which isn't going to happen because I've got dogs and children and this job, I'd have to put in thousands and thousands of hours of input, which Chinese people naturally do because they're born in China and they are raised in that environment. So they have a natural sense for Chinese. Because of so much content over all those years. And so they can know and tell you instantly, not only if something's wrong in any case, but they can actually, hopefully as well, correct you and say, no, you should say it like this. Don't worry about why, because they won't necessarily know that, and it's not important anyway. But they'll be able to say, that's wrong instantly, here's what you should say instead, because they have that natural sense from years and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of input. They're also here to provide encouragement. Now, I don't really mean just saying, you're awesome, well done, you're awesome, that kind of encouragement, but that's good as long as it's well deserved and it's real. Not just saying 真棒, which means awesome, over and over again. It's like, oh, you couldn't do this before. A good tutor, they can say, you didn't do this before, but now you can do it. Or this specific area of pronunciation you've improved on. They can sort of benchmark your progress if you have a long-term relationship with them. So that is fantastic. But the real encouragement comes from having meaningful interactions in Chinese with this person. And most tutors, they choose that job. That's part of their job, is being a good communicator. So they can ask you the right questions. They can help you speak more, and they can get more out of you, essentially. And they can speak also, more importantly, in a way that they know you'll be able to understand by editing their language slightly, sort of like a living graded reader. And having those meaningful conversations, those meaningful interactions, is kind of what learning the language is all about. And that provides the most encouragement, in my opinion. And of course, this is the fourth one. I wouldn't expect this of everyone that you hire, but this is, again, an advantage of being Chinese, coming from a Chinese environment. Their finger is on the pulse of Chinese media and content, a little bit more than it would be for non-native speakers. So asking your tutor and saying, what would you recommend for listening content for this particular subject? Could you go, and if they don't know, they can navigate the Chinese internet a lot better than the average non-native speaker. So they'll be able to research for you and find you some great stuff. So that's what I think we think a tutor is all about, what they're actually for. They're not the be all and end all. They're not the arbiter of what you study when. They can't necessarily teach you how to go from zero to being able to speak and being able to read and consume content. That's what we're for. That's what we made Mandarin Blueprint for, is to get you to that point. But these four things are what they're here to do. So where to find tutors, and how to manage them. So that's a key point, is to manage tutors. So the first one, our biggest recommendation for paid tutors, and they have free tutors, free language exchange partners as well, is italki. Simply for the fact that it's been around probably the longest, and it has the widest selection of tutors, and a really easy booking system. You can just get on there, you put some money in your italki wallet or whatever they call it, you go and choose your tutor, and it's just very straightforward. So there's that one, and the other two are Tandem and HelloTalk, which are kind of similar in the way they function. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how to use these as well right now. So italki, as soon as you sign up, of course you choose your language and you choose your level. I'm just going to choose beginner here. Native language, English. Joining challenges is actually a really good idea. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I highly suggest you do that. It just gamifies the whole situation. And here we go. So I'm going to go through. Sorry, I have my Hong Kong VPN on right now, so everything's in Hong Kong dollars. But I'm going to go through this woman here, Xin. She's got 5 stars. Her English is really good. She's done almost 6,000 lessons, and she speaks in French. So I would maybe look at her. Let's see. How many lessons has she had versus how many students? So she's got 900 reviews, and she's got 5 stars overall. That's really good. But how many lessons does she have? Students. So 300 students and almost 6,000 lessons. That's really good. That means that, if you look at how many students, how many lessons, my mathematics is terrible. But each student has had an average of 20 lessons, almost, which is, that looks good to me. So I would definitely maybe think about booking her in for a demo. So this woman, Linda, her English is not that good. So, she's sort of got some Serbian as well. Let's see what she says about herself. She's friendly. Yeah, I prefer people with really good English, but I don't always exclusively go for that. 60 students and 500 lessons. That's an average of maybe 8 to 10 per. That's not quite as good, but I might still consider it anyway. You never know. Great English, Kelly from Beijing. I'm thinking about improving my Beijing accent. Maybe I'll go with her. So don't be too picky, because there's just so many tutors to choose from. It's really difficult to be picky anyway. You can go in a bit more detail. Go for a filter, people in China or Taiwan, depending on what you want. What's your price range? And go ahead and book your class. Now, when it comes to me, in my profile, in my About Me section, I might put in here what my goals are. Oh wait, hang on. Where do I do that? Yeah, so in my introduction about myself, I might write here what I'm here to learn, what my goals are, where I am at the moment, what my level is at the moment, what I want from a tutor, etc. And when I go to add a new person, I will tell them what I need, be very clear. And if you can't do this, no worries. Obviously, you can say everything in English just to save yourself time and effort. And that's pretty much what I would do. italki's booking system is really easy as well. This isn't actually I've just made this account on my phone. I usually do it on my desktop, but it's like you get an italki kind of wallet. You just charge it up, and it takes the lessons out every time. It takes the money out of your wallet every time you have a session. And most people have like a package to save a bit of cash overall. So this is 14 lessons. She's had 14 lessons there. HK preparation, elementary oral Chinese, advanced oral Chinese. So if it was me, I would go for advanced oral Chinese, and I would say 45 minutes, and I would choose 10 lessons. Once I had decided that this woman in our demo session, she's the one for me. She's a tutor, and you just click here like that. You just literally just go through the schedule. It's so easy, and just highlight everything here, and just go next. And whether you want to have it on the italki Classroom or Skype, I'll be honest with you, I've always used Skype. I've never used the italki Classroom. It might be great. Zoom is also great, but either way, just done. Yeah. And then you go and check out, and it takes the money out of your wallet, or you go and add it to the wallet. So, that is pretty much how italki works. It's really straightforward, easy booking, tons of teachers to choose from, and it's my personal recommendation. It's my favorite to go for. Next is Tandem. So Tandem, once you sign up, a lot of people don't like the initial sign-up process because you have to wait 7 days unless you just sign up for a paid account, a pro account. And I understand if you've got an issue with that. I personally, but I'll tell you, the pro account comes with a 7-day free trial anyway. So you're not actually paying anything. You're just committing to a 7-day free trial, and you can always just immediately, during your trial, you can just go and cancel it within your Apple account, Apple Store, like subscriptions. You can go and cancel it and stuff. So it's not a big deal. What do you want to talk about? That's the first thing they'll ask you once you've signed up and you've chosen your language and what your level is and all that stuff. I'll choose some inspiration here. What do I want? I don't know really. What would I want here? Just I want to sound more natural and fluent. I don't know if that's actually very helpful, but I'm on the spot here. Let's get talking. I'm not going to answer your question. Sorry, I'm busy. So here we go. Here's Tandem. So you just go through. I'll filter people here. So I want people obviously native. I want a native speaker with Chinese. Show members from everywhere. I don't mind. Which gender doesn't really matter to me. I would prefer members with references only. That seems to make more sense. I don't think it matters too much, but just to save time for me, I want to make sure I've got people with reviews and stuff. And you go ahead and you just choose someone and you start chatting. Now remember, this is a language exchange. It's not they're not tutors, they're not paid tutors, so you'll have to have an exchange. You have to teach them a bit of English in most cases. Some people are generally trying to become tutors one day, and they're just sort of doing this for a bit of practice. So you might be able to practice more Chinese than helping them learn English, for example, but generally you want to have a bit of give and take here. Don't forget to head to your own section as well and do the about me. Make sure your picture is all updated. It's my little boy. Make sure you have the right languages, your learning preferences, what type of learner you are, what's your how do you communicate, your time commitment, learning schedule. This is all good stuff. So that's pretty much Tandem. Let's look at HelloTalk now. Here's my HelloTalk account. Don't allow for now. I actually hadn't used this in a while before making this video, and I've still got all my conversations there from like 2 years ago or something. So this is built. It's the way this is built. This HelloTalk. It reminds me of WeChat in the way it's structured. So we have all these sorts of all these old conversations. Just tons and tons of people here. Just tons and tons of people. looking to improve their English or help you improve your Chinese. So these are all people who can just go ahead and you can have video calls, audio chats, text. You can communicate with these people however you want. I believe with Tandem, you have to pay for the video, or is it the other way around? Maybe it's Hello Talk. But either way, they're both worth checking out. But I will say this one last thing, which is with these two, Hello Talk and Tandem, they are often used as dating apps. So, just be aware of that. That's all I'll say. So yeah, there's tons of opportunity here. There's no longer any excuse, even if you're really broke and you can't afford a few dollars for an hour. There's really no excuse anymore to say I can't practice my Chinese, because there's literally thousands of people just waiting to chat. Okay, so those are your three: italki, Tandem, and Hello Talk. There's tons of other ones. There's many more speaking apps, but I would say these three are the leaders right now, with italki being overall our number one suggestion. Okay, so get out there and try those three apps out. So those are our three favorite speaking apps. Go ahead and try those out and see what you think. So it's not just finding the tutors, it's managing them too. Finding the tutors is easy, as you can see, but which tutors to choose, that's another story. So the first point to consider is the reviews. Now, it's not just about whether they have 5 stars. There's people with tons of 5-star ratings, but you should think, especially on italki, for example, I would personally rather go for a tutor that has a relatively low amount of reviews, but they've stuck with the same students for a long time. Whereas someone who's just got, thousands of 5-star reviews, someone's had a single session and said, yeah, I'll give them 5 stars because, it was all right, but they didn't stay with them long term. So you want to try and stay with your tutor as long as possible, because finding new ones it's just another thing to do, isn't it? It just takes up time. So really consider that going forward, because I will say that a lot of tutors do kind of, in Chinese they say 敷衍, basically being perfunctory, just sort of going through the motions with you, but they're not really trying that hard. They'll try and have a conversation with you and they'll push things along. They don't really listen that much to what you want, and they just they want to keep things casual because it's easy for them. They don't want to do any extra homework, give you homework, do their own preparation. They just want to, make their few bucks and get out, and they have tons of students in that, and they have lots of people booked up. But that's not necessarily what you want. You want someone that actually loves their job, puts effort into it, earns their money, and those are the people with longevity, students that stay a long time. So the next point here is to establish what you want from your tutor. How long are you planning on doing this? How often? In your sessions, what do you want to cover? And you probably won't know the answer to this if you've never hired a tutor before, or it's the first time doing it for Chinese. So we've got you covered. If you download your speaking guide in the description below, you'll see tons of ideas on what goals you might want to create for yourself and how to make sure that your tutor sticks to those goals, as well as creating a study schedule, etc. So the next point here is do a lot of demos, because demos are essentially free on Tandem and Hello Talk. You can just start up a conversation and say, let's have a chat. On italki, you have to pay for them. They're usually half an hour and they cost a few dollars, $5 or something like that. And just choose a bunch of tutors that you think would work out based on their profiles, their reviews. I also base it on what other languages they speak. If they speak English well, that's also a good sign. Not because I want to use English in the classes, but because they will understand language learning a little bit better. They'll be able to 同情me. They'll be able to sympathize, empathize with me rather, and maybe send me awesome content when I ask for it. So doing a lot of demos is important. Now, during the demos, you can ask all sorts of questions. I've got a list of questions to ask in the speaking guide, which you can download in the description below. Things like, how do you prepare for class? It's like open-ended question that is quite important to ask, because a lot of teachers don't. really do much. They do as little as possible. So if you ask, how do you prepare? That's a good one. Do you give homework? What kind of homework do you give usually? Do you specialize in anything? Do you specialize in pronunciation or etc. or learning, I don't know, phrases, certain cool phrases? A big one for me is, how do you correct mistakes? And that also gives you an opening to sort of tell them how you would like to correct your mistakes, which I personally prefer detailed notes, or as detailed as possible, and not interrupting me too much unless it's really, it's too, I don't know, just try not to interrupt the flow of conversation, because the whole point is getting out what's in my mind. A lot of people, especially that are not very experienced, they'll try and interrupt, basically. They'll say, oh, he needs my help, I'm going to interrupt him, whereas I don't personally like that. Maybe you do, but you need to make that clear. And demos are a good thing to do. So just for that, but it's not just asking questions. It's also, you can ask yourself questions during the demo as well. Things like, do they listen to you when you ask them to do something? You can usually find that out by the second class, because you can give them a load of corrections. Do they continue to do what you ask them not to do in the class, or by the second class? If so, then they're not for you, probably. Are they nice? Did you get along well? That's kind of a vital one. There's other questions like this in the speaking guide. But yeah, you can usually figure out everything after the demo. But if you're not sure, you'll know for sure on your second class. So do lots of demos, and the reason why you want to do a lot of demos is because you want to create a team of tutors. You don't just want to have one tutor that you say you really like, because one day that tutor will go. Because this is not often, for many people it is, but for a lot of people it's just a casual thing, often between jobs. So you'll want to make sure you have at least 2 tutors that you like on the go at any one time. Just so you always have one that you can go to in case one just drops off the map one day. So that's the gist. That's the general thing, how to find and manage tutors. Now let's talk about what to actually do before, during, and after, or between sessions with your tutor. So you've signed up, you've got a tutor ready, you like him or her, and you're going to have your next class tomorrow. What sort of things should you do in preparation? So the first thing that you should think about, and this is not really just before your class, this is something that might take a little while, so you should plan maybe a few sessions ahead, at least a few weeks, few months even, of what you actually want to cover. Now you won't always stick to this, in fact quite rarely probably, but it's good not just to go in blindly to every class and just say, I want to practice speaking, and just start speaking. You can maybe do that at a higher level, like I sometimes do that. Just go in and I pick a subject or a speaking activity, which I'll give you a ton of cool speaking activities to go through. But you want to have some sort of backbone, a plan of what you're progressing through something. Now there's tons of ways you can do this. Again, consult the speaking guide for some ideas, but generally if you're on the Mandarin Blueprint method, you can just work your way through words that are giving you trouble, that you're learning characters and words or phrases that you'd like to master. You can note those down, and you can make sure that you master how to do those in a single session. So you choose like 3 to 5 per session that you'd like to get a better grasp of, and maybe you plan that out for 10 sessions. You can also, if you're aiming to pass the HSK, you can base your plan off of HSK words, for example. So there's tons of things you can do there, but it's good to have, or you can even do this. I think the most common, just general plan that you can create is where you make a list of topics or language functions. So, at the at a restaurant, agreeing or disagreeing. These are like functions, and restaurant's the idea of like a topic or a location or a situation. You make a ton of list of these, and you ask your tutor to just give them in a restaurant, and your tutor will plan a bunch of vocabulary specifically for that. Maybe you want to go through another resource that you're using, Chinese articles, news articles, current events, graded readers that you're also reading, stories from the Mandarin Blueprint Method that you unlock. You want to master this story, or other resources, a podcast in Chinese. You want to go through, you want to discuss it. Maybe you plan ahead several of these little podcasts. But it's good to have a plan so you don't just go in blindly. Otherwise, you'll end up just talking about general topics. And for a beginner, intermediate, that can get, it can get tiresome pretty quick because you'll run out of stuff to say, and there might be even awkward silences and stuff like that. If you have a good tutor, that's not likely to happen, but still, it's good to have a plan, and then you can tick off what you've covered in that lesson, and you also have an aim, and it's very motivating as well to have that goal and that idea of progression through that study plan. So before your sessions, you'll want to consult your plan. What am I learning today? And prepare. If you're learning a list of words, maybe you can also think about what you learned last time with this particular tutor, if there was anything that you should review based on that. So have a look what you're going to learn, prepare some stuff, send it to your tutor, ask your tutor what they've prepared for this session. If there's anything that you should do, although of course that could fall under the category of homework, but which they should have already told you and you should have already done. But generally, just consult your notes. Is there anything I need to prepare for this particular session? So here it is. It's very simple. It's just a few very important classroom phrases that you might need from time to time. Can you speak more slowly, please? 请你说慢点好吗? Can you repeat that? I don't understand. That's a very important one. How do you say blah 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 in Mandarin? Wait a moment, please. Please give me a little time. That's also very important, especially because you're online. There's often like a lag. So you need to make sure that they give you enough time to respond, and they don't feel like, I should help him out and interrupt him again. That's one of my pet peeves. So 请给我一点时间答复，谢谢. And then, of course, there's a section here just for the actual class itself. So you can print out a bunch of these for each class and just have it in front of you, and you can write down notes in Pinyin or Chinese characters or English, whatever you're able to write. Not only preparing what you're learning, so maybe there's 5 words that you want to master or functions that you want to master in this lesson. So you can have those there in front of you and write notes about the individual words or phrases or grammar functions as you're in class. And you can also write notes to grade the tutor after class in this sense. So anything that you want to write, you put it in here on your speaking cheat sheet. So that's for before sessions. Now let's look at what you should do during sessions. This is going to be the longest one. So whilst you're in session, I would say it's like I said before, it's really easy just to fall into this boring sort of, if you become blasé and just let the tutor take you where you want, they'll often take you to a boring place or a repetitive place, because they're not always amazingly creative, and they want to do what's easiest for them, basically, in most cases. So you'll end up just, if you don't take control and say, I want to have here's some activities, I want to do at least one of these activities every single class with you. If you don't do that, you'll end up eventually you'll always fall into that boring sort of repetitive, samey, just talking about this and that, basically making small talk for an hour, and that's not really that fun. Here's some awesome speaking activities. Some of these I've been using for a long time. Some of them I researched some new ones, and I researched many different speaking activities for you and put my top 15, or is it 16, in this list. I'll show you here. Yeah, so it's 15 activities, and I put a W next to ones that you can do for writing as well. Most of these can be applied to also writing activities. So try and do at least one of these per session. Maybe even all of your sessions are all about, they're just packed with these speaking activities, and that's all you do. That'd be great. So one is just reading aloud. I think that you should try every session, even if it's just a single sentence or paragraph, probably paragraphs more appropriate. You spend some time reading aloud, and you get your pronunciation get some pronunciation feedback, and then if you're higher level, sentence intonation, stress, rhythm, that sort of thing. That's where it's good to find a teacher with a specialization, that kind of thing as well. This is a really cool one. Describing a photo, you just have an image that pops up. You can go to a random image generator like Generator Mix or random word generators. You just have an image. Random word generator actually has an image function where you have a random image as well. That's not a mistake. And you have all these thousands of images, and you just pick one until one looks interesting, and you describe exactly what's happening in as much detail as you possibly can, even if it's just individual words, if you're a lower level, or very simple sentences. And you can even invent a story around the image. And that's a really good way of practicing different tenses, so that is just a great activity. It's one of my favorites, actually. Interesting questions and topics. Go to Random Question Generators. I found a great website for this. Just go and check out the links that you'll find in this download. There's loads of random questions that you could spend an entire hour just on some of this, on a single question, because there's so much to it. It's interesting questions to ask. Negotiation. This is more like a speaking function and an activity in one. So your teacher will prepare a list of situations that you can, and this could be maybe part of your study plan. It's okay. I want to practice negotiation for 3 sessions, and I want to do it in 3 different ways between landlord and tenant. So but at the same time, I learn a bunch of useful vocabulary for that specific situation. Because being a tenant is a very common thing. Talking to police, being a customer and a business owner. Of course, that's the most common form of negotiation, but there's negotiation throughout all walks of life, and you spend a lot more time than you think day to day negotiating with people. So that's a great one. Proposing a solution. So they give you a problem and you propose a solution. It's very simple. Expressing an opinion. The more controversial the issue, the better. Just because, and of course, you can even pretend, just like when you used to do debate practice in school, where I don't know, my teacher used to do this anyway. What side do you support in this debate? And then you tell her, and then she'd be like, okay, now you're on the opposite side. You have to make the other argument. And it's always fun to do that, because you don't always get to talk about that sort of stuff with your friends and family and stuff, because it's controversial. So you can use these tutor sessions as like an outlet for that sort of thing. It's great. Compare and contrast. So that one I haven't used myself, but that seems like it could work. Paraphrasing. So they give you a story, or they ask you to read, or maybe you read out loud an article together with him or her correcting you, and then you are supposed to sum up what it's all about. Telling a story, absolutely vital language skill is telling story. Show and tell, because obviously you'll have a camera, right? So you can pick an object that you like, that's personal to you, and you can tell the story behind that object. Auditioning, like you're auditioning as a part for a play, that's really good for intonation and saying things in certain ways, and learning how to do that in Chinese. So the teacher is like the director, and they say, okay, now say it as if you really hate this person, or now say it as if you're confused, or you've just had amnesia, and you just you don't know your mother anymore, and you're trying to there's all sorts of different things that as long as your tutor does preparation, is a bit creative, that's the key thing. So you always whichever one of these, this is a really cool one, lateral thinking puzzles, a little bit higher level because it's kind of challenging to do in English arguably, but you're given like an interesting problem. Lateral thinking, go and check it out, just do a Google search for it. Elevator pitch, you pitch something in 60 seconds. Again, it might be better to prepare it on the teacher's part and your part. You need some preparation. That's why a study plan is vital, because you can prepare some ideas, and then it's a more productive class. Job interviews and the balloon debate, which of these objects do I throw out the balloon? There's all these cool things, and there's more, if you go and search online, but these are the ones that I thought were the most interesting. And to be honest, you could go from 0 to fluency just on these 15 activities. So go ahead and try some of those out. Next one is make sure they take notes. I've already kind of touched upon this, But again, most teachers will just, if you're on Skype, which most of the time you are, they'll just send you the words through as you need them. They'll just text the words, and it's quite cool. Skype, like the word will come up full screen. It's nice, but I don't know. I also like, if I'm paying good money for a tutor, I want them not just to send me a bunch of words and then I have a bunch of words that I can copy and paste out of Skype at the end of the session. But I also want them to, actually think about what's going on, especially if we have multiple sessions. And that's something you establish in the beginning of your relationship. So I want you to take notes, but I also want you to grade me on all sorts of things: pronunciation, fluency, how colloquial do I sound, how native do I sound, and also where I improve. What mistakes am I making repetitively? That's a good thing to make sure that they note down. Don't interrupt me every time I make a single mistake necessarily, but note down. Just basically, are you paying attention? That's a good way of knowing, are you paying attention? If I'm paying you $10, $15 an hour a session, are you earning that money, or are you just sort of full-yening me? Are you just going through the motions? Ask questions. So this is a good time to get to know your tutor. It's not just about you. In fact, I think you should try and make 50% of the things you say to anyone in all walks of life, whether it's your spouse, your friends, your partners, whoever it is. If you say the 50% of the things you say to them are questions about them, you'll have much better relationships, much more interesting conversations. So learn a lot about your tutor. If they ask you a question, you ask, what about you? What do you think? And then listen intently to what they say. Listen first. So actually listen to what they're saying. And don't sort of, whilst they're speaking, don't be like, what can I say next? Just actually listen to what they say and have an organic, meaningful interaction. And then respond after you've listened and understood everything they say. Ask qualifying questions. Sorry, can you repeat that? Use the speaking cheat sheet. So you mean, that makes sure you clarify everything about them as well. Don't try to impress. So even if your vocabulary, you've learned some new stuff, you're an intermediate or an advanced speaker, just try and stick to, don't try and show off what you've learned necessarily, because just speak as a great communicator is someone that communicates in a clear way, not someone that has a massive vocabulary. And if you focusing on the basics is very important. Even at my level, when I'm with a tutor, I try and use language that gets across my point in the most succinct way possible. I'm not going to be like, I learned the word excavate in Chinese, so I'm going to go and try and use it. It ends up not being great for you, because you don't get as much speaking done, because you're thinking about how to say everything. Quantity and quality is what we're looking for. Relax. This is a big one for me, even now, but especially before, when my Chinese wasn't that good. Thinking about what they think about your Chinese is not going to help. Relax. Try not to make any self-judgments at all. Just go in there and do your best. Because any negative things that you have about, or a nervousness you have about the situation, it's just going to make things worse. And trust me, if your tutor's been around for a while, they've heard a lot worse than you. If you think you're bad, if you think you're not communicating well, or you're not understanding what they're saying, they've had worse, always. So just think about it that way. Don't guess too much means don't guess how to say things that you aren't sure about. That's where preparation before class comes in, but often you'll try and make a new thought and you're not sure about, this word I want to use, I'm not sure if it's actually used this way. Clarify first. It's okay to go off your tangent, like you're about to say a point. It's okay not to say that point and just be like, I want to say this thing. I want to use this word. But I'm not sure how to use it. Can you help me? Can you give me an example sentence? Can I use it this way? Form it in a question. Don't just say it possibly wrong. Don't just guess how to say it. Clarify first. Can I say it this way? Oh, I can't. Oh, okay. Well, I want to say this, and just say English if you want, if you're lower level, or just get your point across what you want to say as best you can, and then ask them, how can I say this better? How can I say this more dida? Embrace your mistakes as well at the same time. So it's don't make mistakes unnecessarily and too often by just guessing all the time. But also when you do make mistakes, that's a process towards becoming better. Especially if you follow the golden rule, and this applies to business as well, big time, which is just don't make the same mistake twice. So you make a mistake, that's fine, but focus on it. Make sure you note it down, or she or he notes it down and sends it to you. Make a flashcard out of it, and really focus on it that way. If you get nervous, there's a few things you can do. So if you really are you're really struggling, and a lot of people do, including myself, right, even right now I struggle. I get nervous with a tutor because I don't know, it's just me, it's just my personality. That's how I am with speaking. I'm not as confident as I should be. I always think I'm worse than I am, and a lot of people have this issue. So there's a few things you can do. When I was learning martial arts, my teacher said, he's like, he was he was teaching like Wing Chun and Tai Chi and all this like really sort of peaceful, loving stuff, but he's actually a really tough dude. Like, he's been in a lot of street fights and stuff. And he would say, if you're in a confrontation with someone, don't look them in the eyes, because that can be very intimidating and scary. Look at them here, at their third eye, and it really works in all sorts of nervous situations. Look at, because it still looks like you're looking at them in their eyes, but you're not. You're looking here, or you can look slightly away, but still look towards them, but just slightly away. If you don't make that eye contact, that can actually help a lot if you're feeling nervous. Or you can just turn the video off. You don't have to have video on. It can just be a purely audio conversation. I wouldn't recommend that unless it's in a serious situation. If you're really it's really affecting you, where it's it's not a productive class, because seeing these smiles and the gestures and that connection, the human connection there, is very important. That's I don't know what percentage, but it's a big percentage of communication is gestures and things like non-verbal. Yeah, and this is a big one. Don't say sorry. You're paying them to help you improve your Chinese. This is literally the last place you need to apologize for having bad Chinese or speaking mistakes. They're getting money for this. And even if they're not being paid, even if it's a free language exchange, don't apologize. Be confident. Believe you're a good Chinese speaker and you will be better. It's just how it works. Okay, so those are the most important things to think about during your sessions. Again, please consult the speaking guide for a written version of this and some extra little tidbits as well. So it's got a few more points here whilst you're in session. Is try to remove that filter. I kind of touched on this when I was talking about that speaking activity, about controversial topics. Remember, you're not with your friends and family. You don't have to filter yourself as much as you are, because again, you're paying most of the situation. You're paying for this session, so you can maybe talk about things that are a bit out there, or you can maybe you can not talk about in, say, a bar or with certain family members. You can just talk about whatever you want, and really bring out your true self. There's no need to have a filter. And if you do that, you'll have less of that emotional baggage, and you'll be able to have a more real, meaningful conversation. Come out of your shell, as they say. Pause and pace. Now, these next few points are related. So this is the first one. This is more about actual speaking, like itself, like how to make your words come out better. Instead of what I sort of recommended this in the pronunciation mastery course. So when you're speaking, this is quite tough to do at first, but try to manage your speaking level, your speed at 80%. And that's number one. So just pace it. Just take it at lower speed, even if it's something that you know exactly how to say. So often what people do is like, I know how to say 你叫什么名字? I've said that a million times. What's your name in Chinese? 你叫什么名字? So they'll say it really quick, and then they haven't thought about what the next sentence is going to be yet, so they have this big pause, and so it's much better to say 你叫什么名字? So even if it's something you're really familiar with, you don't have to think about it as you're saying it, but you're saying it longer, so it gives you more time to think about the next part. So that's key. That's a key point. Next is pausing. This is something you get you'll be able to learn it from your tutor as well. You can maybe ask him or her to give you some tips on this, but mainly you just learn this through listening immersion. Where do native speakers naturally pause in speech so it doesn't sound weird, like I'm doing when I'm speaking English? So like I just pause there. It's, so where, like, not just at the end of sentences, but during sentences as well. So that's something that it's good to practice and get your tutors help with. Use fillers and conversation connectors. So if we actually offer a list of 418 conversation connectors. I'll come back to fillers in a second. Conversation connectors are things like small, short phrases that go at the beginning, in the middle, or the end of sentences that sound really native, and they are really native. But basically, they're kind of fillers as well. They're just giving you a little bit of extra time. So, for example, 就我而言, or 对我来说, 对我而言, these sorts of three phrases are all mean the same thing. 对我来说, like in my opinion. They're fixed phrases that Chinese people use all the time. And if you learn a bunch of these and you put them into your speech, they give you that extra bit of time, and they sound really good. And they do have a specific function as well. Fillers, on the other hand, fillers are similar, but they're more just sounds. Like or or like, yeah, these sorts of sounds that aren't quite as advanced as conversation connectors, but Chinese people use them all the time, and everyone uses them in their own native languages because we're not robots. We need time to formulate our thoughts, even if it's our mother language. So if you don't use fillers, it's almost like you're giving yourself an extra disadvantage that even native speakers don't give themselves. So you're making it super hard on yourself. So the most common fillers, I've written them all as a list. Things like 这个, meaning this, but people say it to mean like 这个那个, like you can just throw tons of these in. 就是然后 I think those are the 5 main ones. You just use them in any combination between sentences, just give you more time to formulate your thoughts. And as I've already mentioned, practice reading aloud, not just in session, but this is something you should do to prepare as well. Shadowing. We've got another video on shadowing as well, which I'll leave in the link in the description below, so you can just go and watch that video. So there you go, guys. Those are the most important things to consider during your sessions. Now, for the last part of this video, let's just go through quickly, last little bit, after your sessions. What do you do once your session is complete? Well, the first thing is go over your notes, reread all the notes that you've written, maybe put them in a more organized format. Often I'll just write a bunch of stuff down. A lot of it's irrelevant or in a weird order, maybe to type them out. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't often use my hand to write stuff, to notes down. I usually just type it straight into my computer, but some people like to write it down first, then type it up later. Or just, keep a really nice, organized, written journal of what your notes are for that particular session. Is there anything that you need to work on? That you need to work on? Anything that that you had trouble communicating? That's often how I do things. In conversations, I have an English meaning that I want to express, but the Chinese just doesn't come. And I'm like, what? I can't say this in Chinese, and I really want it to be able to, so I'm going to note that down, and I'm going to learn how to do it, or ask my tutor to send me information. Because remember, most tutors, your relationship is not just only existing during the session. They can communicate with you and help you out between sessions as well. Talking to yourself can be good. It's actually this is a really good way to figure out where your gaps are. Like I just said, I'm not only in conversation with people, but in conversation with myself, Like, again, I'll try and say something out loud, describing my environment or my own thoughts in Chinese, and I can't. Why can't I? It's because I don't have this word. Okay, teach it, note it down, send it to my teacher. Creating and reviewing flashcards out of your mistakes. This is great for written, but often for written practice. So you write something in Chinese, your teacher says, no, that's wrong. Here's the correct version, and you take that correct sentence and make a flashcard out of it. That's great. But with speaking, you can also do that, but it mainly involves sentences you create together. You can actually get your tutor to send you some example sentences, as long as they don't mind doing that. They don't have to, because they're not being paid specifically, but a lot of teachers would, as long as it's not too much extra work for them, and you can create flashcards out of those. Of course, if they write written notes, you can tell them how you want your notes written. One of my tutors, I don't have her anymore, unfortunately, but she would write such great notes for me. It's like an Excel, and she would write the questions she asked, my answers, where I need improvement, the phrases that we learned. She'd put them all in an Excel sheet. And Excel can be imported directly into Anki. So with a bit of preparation, and exporting and importing, you can make flashcards much easier in that situation. Update your study plan. Do you want to change your study plan? Maybe tick off what you covered. Maybe you've thought of some things, or your tutor gave you some ideas of other things to study. A study plan, your tutor can help you build that. It's not just you on your own, remember. So maybe you consult them and they say, how about we do this? And you can update that. Or tick off what you've already learned, add some new stuff on at the end, because you want to keep that study plan a few sessions in the future, ideally. And of course, prepare your next session. Homework is often something your tutor will give you. And again, if you have a good tutor, they're thinking more than one session at a time. Saying, next session, let's cover this. I think you need more work on this. And then you'll say, okay, how do I prepare for that? And they'll tell you. And you go and do that. And the next one is, this is probably, I guess, is one of, if not the most important part of this entire video, which is sharpen the saw. And essentially, when I say sharpen the saw, I mean focus on your main learning activities, which hopefully for most of you is Mandarin Blueprint. The Mandarin Blueprint method, continue learning characters, continue learning words, and continue listening, continue reading, continue shadowing. Divide your time up fairly equally between these things, and just make sure you're doing that consistently every day. Your speaking practice is just a single part. The speaking practice with your tutor is just one part of your study regime, and you want to try and maintain a balance if possible. So that's our video on speaking. So get out there and start speaking. Go and book some demos. Go and create your study plan. Go and check out the speaking guide and the other cool stuff that you've downloaded along just below in the description there. And get in touch with us at contact@mandarinblueprint.com if you have any questions. All right, guys, happy studying. Bye-bye.